I appreciate you stopping by to check out this episode of Vintage Audio Review. In this episode, I'm going to talk about a couple of tuners, the Sansui TU-217 and the McIntosh MR75. McIntosh sold the MR75 between 1980 and 1985 at the cost of $1,350. The TU-217 was sold between 1977 to 1980 at a cost of $190. What I thought I would do is give a little tour of the features of these and show them in operation tuning a signal, and then I'm going to inject a signal into the FM antennas of both of these and see how low a signal I can put in to where the tuner is decoding the tone, which would be a 1 kilohertz tone or so that was injected into the FM signal, and we'll see what it looks like coming out of the unit, how they compare. Does one have more sensitivity than the other? So right now we're going to take a little tour of each unit and kind of just see how they operate, and then I'm going to hook them up to a signal generator and test a signal going in at the low end of the frequency band, which would be around 88 megahertz, and then at the high end of the band, which would be around 108 megahertz. And we'll just kind of compare and see which one does a better job with a smaller signal. Here is the front of the TU-217, and starting on the left, we do have rack mounting handles. There's one on each side. This is our power switch, and an LED comes on when the power is applied. This is our tuning dial display, obviously, and I will point out that there is no backlighting on any of the meters or the display. Here is our signal strength indicator, and here is our tuning indicator meter here. Here is our mode switch for mono or FM auto, and that affects the muting while you're tuning the signal. And here is the AM/FM switch, and this here is our tuning knob. So what I'm going to do is tune a station that is at 96.1 megahertz. That's the station here. We'll just see how it tunes, and then we'll tune the same station with the McIntosh and kind of see how that goes. Also, I should point out that the Sansui weighs in at a little bit over 11 pounds, whereas the McIntosh weighs about 23 pounds. I do have the muting on. I'm going to go ahead and tune towards the station, which is 96.1, and kind of keep an eye on the meters here. You should hear it as it starts tuning. So you can see that our our tuning indicator is right in the center, which is what you want to go for, and our signal strength is at 5. This obviously is the rear of the Sansui TU-217, and starting on the left we have our ground connection for the antenna. We have terminals here for 300 ohm antennas, and here is our AM antenna connection there. This also is our AM antenna rod, and our line level outputs are right here. Here is a close-up view of the McIntosh MR75. One thing that hopefully comes out is it is powered on, and I darkened the room a little bit so you could see the nice lighting that everything has. It has that kind of McIntosh light green glow to everything. We'll start off over here on the right. This little guy right here is the pan lock feature, and there's another one here, and that has to do with installing a wooden case for the unit. This obviously does not have the wooden case, but that was an option, and the pan lock makes it simple to install the wooden case. Right here is our on-off switch and volume control, and we do have a headphone jack, and we do have a 1/4 inch headphone jack, so the volume control is nice to have for that guy. Here's our tuning knob, obviously. This is our mute on-off switch for FM. Here is our mode switch, whether we're doing mono or stereo. And here's our AM/FM selector over here. Our center tuning indicator and our signal strength indicator are over here, and we'll see that in action. And then we have whether we have the muting on or FM on, you can see those LEDs lit. What I'm going to do is tune this to the same station I did with the Sansui TU-217, and that would be at 96.1 megahertz. That's where the station is, and we'll just see how it tunes and kind of get a feel for that. So you can see the LEDs are coming on. And there it's pretty well tuned. If you were not quite tuned, you would have LEDs come on over here or over here. Let me just move it a little bit and you'll see what I'm talking about. So it says we're off a little bit on the plus side, so we go back. And as you can tell, there are 5 little LEDs lit. It has a maximum, I believe, of 10 LEDs, and it's showing that we're in stereo and we're on FM, and we do have the FM muting on, which cuts back the noise in between stations while you're tuning. One thing I wanted to point out is that the station we tuned into was 96.1, and that would be somewhere right around here. Where we're actually showing that we're tuned is 97.1, which is there, and you can see the little LED indicator. Now, my guess is that there's some adjustment that is out on this as far as lining up the position of the LED indicator to the actual station. I don't have a service manual for it, so I didn't try to adjust it, but it is off, and it's something that you can still tune to either end of the band. You just have to be aware that you're going to be off by about a megahertz. This obviously is the rear of the McIntosh MR75, and starting on the right we have some fixed RCA outputs, unbalanced outputs, as well as some variable RCA outputs, and the variable output is controlled by the volume control on the front, which also controls the volume control for the headphones. Another interesting feature is that we have scope outputs for both the vertical and horizontal inputs into an oscilloscope, and the purpose of using an oscilloscope display, which I believe McIntosh sold a display that you could hook up to this, would be to help minimize your multi-path interference. You also have something called an FM preselector, and if you were by a really strong station, you would go ahead and put that in. If you were getting overloaded by a station, you could go ahead and flip that in, but for most normal people, you would just keep it out. We have a slow blow replaceable fuse here. Here is our 75 ohm input for the FM antenna, and we have also 300 ohm inputs for the FM antenna and an AM antenna input, as well as a ground input. We do have an unswitched AC outlet. This guy and this guy right here are part of the panel lock system. And can't forget, this is our AM Murata antenna right here. Right now I just wanted to show where the signal and tuning meters were for the TU-217. What I have set up is an 88.5 megahertz signal at about minus 82 dBm. I also have it set for a narrowband FM modulation. Also, the muting is off on the TU-217, so the tuning is fairly well centered, and the signal level is showing 2.5. I'm not sure what that is in relation to, but it's 2.5. And right now I'm going to switch over to the analyzer's output so you can see what's actually coming out of it. It is being modulated with a 1 kilohertz signal. I do not know exactly if it's 1 kilohertz or 1.1 kilohertz. We'll see what the analyzer shows. Then we'll see what the minimum signal is that this can take and still look okay. So right now we have that 88.5 megahertz minus 82 dBm signal going into our Sansui TU-217 tuner. What I'm going to do is slowly decrease the signal level to where the noise level, so that would be the signal down here, starts going higher, which means that our noise is increasing and we're not going to hear things as well. So I'm going to go ahead and decrease that. There's minus 86 dBm down. You can see that it's getting worse. Now we're at minus 87 dBm down. The noise floor is coming up. And now we're at minus 88 dBm down. Now we're at minus 90 dBm down. By the way, our signal strength meter has dropped a bit below 2. And we'll go down another dBm. We're at minus 92 right now. Minus 94. The signal is still there at 1 kilohertz. So this is minus 95. Our signal strength has dropped to 1 now. Here's minus 100. Minus 101. It's still picking up the 1 kilohertz signal. This is minus 102. Minus 103. You can still see that it's seeing the signal. Minus 104. It's still picking it up, but the noise around it is pretty bad. So I'm going to say it's minus 104 for the limit on this guy, because it's kind of just not much bigger than the noise. So we'll say that this guy at 88.5 megahertz can pick up to minus 104 dBm. Right now I have a 100 megahertz minus 82 dBm signal going into the Sansui TU-217 tuner. You can see that the tune indicator is pretty well centered, and our signal strength is, I don't know, maybe 2 1/4, a little bit above it. Also, I should point out where the needle is over here. It's pretty darn close to 108, and when we were at 88.5, it was indeed pretty much where it should be according to the dial indicator. Right now, I have a 108 megahertz signal going into the Sansui TU-217, and it's at minus 82 dBm. And what I'm going to do is decrease the signal level like I did before when we were at 88.5 megahertz, and we'll see if it has any difference in performance at the high end of the frequency band. Minus 86 dBm, and you can see noise floor has come up. Minus 88, minus 89, minus 90, minus 93. I should point out that the TU-217 signal strength indicator is just a bit less than 1 at this point. Minus 95, minus 98, minus 99, minus 100, minus 103. It's still picking up the 1 kilohertz signal, but once again, it's not much higher than the noise. My signal level is about 0 now, but it's still picking something up. So the specification was a minus 103.4, and we're at minus 104. So we're pretty close. I mean, it's picking it up. I don't really know that you would be able to hear much. It would be kind of staticky. I hooked it up to my receiver, and you can barely hear the tone, and there's just a lot of static. I don't know that it came through here when I just tried recording it, but anyway, that's kind of what it does. And now we're going to go hook up the McIntosh. So here's our McIntosh MR75 AM/FM tuner, and I have my signal generator set for 108 megahertz at minus 82 dBm. So this little red LED over here is actually part of the dial, and it moves to the channel you selected. And what I wanted to point out was that we should be at 108 megahertz, and we're probably at 109 megahertz. So it didn't tune quite exactly there. We also have our muting off, and our mode is on stereo, just how it was for the Sansui TU-217 tuner. A nice feature of this unit is it has a headphone jack. When I was tuning in the station, I was listening for the best 1 kilohertz that I could get, which turned out to be what I saw on my analyzer as well. We only have one LED for signal strength. So now we're going to head over and see what the analyzer is showing us as far as the signal level. And I should point out I am using the fixed outputs from the McIntosh. So right now we're looking at the fixed output of the MR75 tuner. It is set for 108 megahertz at minus 82 dBm, and it is not looking as good as the Sansui TU-217 tuner, you have some more spurs over here, and the overall noise floor is higher. The frequency is still 1.063, so that apparently is caused by the signal generator that I'm using. I'm going to go ahead and start decreasing the signal level. That's minus 86 dB. The claimed sensitivity for the McIntosh is minus 101 dBm, so we still have a little ways to go. So that's minus 90 dB. That's minus 92. So you can see that it's really not doing much good. I mean, the 1 kilohertz is there, but when we've got all this other stuff there as well. So that's at minus 92. And just for grins, I will bring it down a little bit more. That's minus 94. So still seeing the signal right here, but you've got all this other noise and stuff coming in. So the McIntosh is not going to meet its sensitivity requirement of minus 101, and that's at 108 megahertz. I'm going to go bring it down to the low end of the band like I did with the Sansui tuner, and we'll see if it does any better there. I now have the frequency set to 88.5 megahertz at minus 82 dBm. And I wanted to point out, here is our LED tuning dial indicator, and it is not quite at 90 megahertz. It should be at 88.5, which should be somewhere in this area. So it's off about a megahertz or so on the scale. Also, we have one LED showing for signal strength at this point. Now we're going to look at what the analyzer is showing us. So right now I have input a minus 88.5 megahertz signal at minus 82 dBm, and it looks fairly decent. It's a nice strong 1 kilohertz signal, or actually 1.063 kilohertz signal. And I'm going to go ahead and start decreasing the signal level. So that is minus 85 dBm. It's still looking pretty good. That's minus 89 dBm. Minus 95 dBm, minus 97 dBm. You can see that this guy's pretty small here. We can probably go a little bit more, about minus 98 dBm. And actually, I can't hear anything out of the headphones that I have hooked up. I'll start increasing the power to see at what point I still can hear a signal coming out. So right here at minus 95 dBm, I can just barely hear that signal above the noise with the headset. So the signal strength indicator always showed one LED for this. So right now I have increased the signal level to minus 74 dBm, and I'm still at 88.5 megahertz, and I am showing 2 LEDs for the signal strength rather than the one LED that I had at the lower power levels. Before I discuss the data, I wanted to point out that both of these tuners are at least 40 years old, and from what I can tell, neither has had any servicing. Most likely you wouldn't do much servicing on the Sansui, but the McIntosh has a lot more going on with it and probably could use some basic servicing. Now, I only did a basic test on these tuners, and that was just to see how small a signal they each could acquire. And without a doubt, the Sansui TU-217 won that battle. You saw the difference between the two signal levels at 108 megahertz. At 88.5 megahertz, the Sansui had a lower noise floor and a bit larger signal. So overall, I would say that the Sansui performed better, as well as tuning a small signal. Now, I hooked them both up to an amplified tuned antenna that I have and tuned different stations, and they both worked well. I like the way that the Sansui tunes easier. It's just more straightforward, simpler. With the McIntosh, you got little plus LED indicators, a minus, and it just seemed harder to actually tune in the station. It was much easier to do, believe it or not, on the Sansui TU-217. So overall, I had fun doing this. I learned a little bit, and the McIntosh is a real beautiful piece of gear. I don't know how much people use their FM tuners. I use mine on occasion, but for the most part I don't. So it's kind of like testing a cassette. Sometimes you might want to use it Sometimes you may not, but I thought that the McIntosh is such a beautiful piece of gear, and the Sansui has a handsome look to it as well, that it would be kind of fun to just do this little test between the two units. So anyway, that's kind of the summary on the Tale of Two Tuners. Once again, I thank you for watching the video. I would love to hear any comments you may have, and I know there's more testing that one could have done. I just don't have a lot of the gear for testing FM tuners or receivers. And I didn't bother AM. That is just something, I listen to AM a lot, but I just didn't feel the need to test the AM portion of these. Once again, I thank you for taking the time out of your day or night or afternoon to check out this video. If you like the video, please hit the like button. If you have not subscribed, that is always a good thing to do for the channel. And until next time, have a great day or night.